Welcome. This is the Family Law Channel. I'm Scott Drake with my guest, a retired Superior Court Judge, Santa Clara, California. Nice area, by the way. Eugene Hyman. Judge Hyman, welcome back.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and to your listeners.
And back at you, sir. This is an article we talk about in the New York Times called Injustice in Murder Cases, and it's fascinating. It's a study by the RAND Corporation focusing on Philadelphia. And what it does is it exposes a vast difference in how clients fare depending on the kind of lawyer they are assigned. And we're talking about indigent clients who get a court-appointed lawyer, and frequently the results aren't favorable for them. Judge, talk about the findings. I mean, this is intuitive to what we think, is that somebody who's being paid not very much, who doesn't have a lot of time, who probably has a high caseload, isn't going to do as good a job for you in defending you, helping defend you, as somebody you're paying to do it, right?
Right. Well, of course, there's numerous factors that we're talking about. Obviously, each individual attorney is different, and even many who are poorly paid do excellent work because of their commitment, no matter how many cases they have. But as you pointed out, if you're poorly paid, then you have to carry a larger caseload in order to make a living. But there's several things that the study pointed out. One of them is that when you have a public defender's office, and back east they're also sometimes called legal aid, you have the advantage of being in an office with other attorneys that you can bounce ideas off of, whereas if you're an individual that's being court appointed to individual cases, you don't have that advantage. You don't have anyone supervising you. You don't have anyone to talk to. You probably don't have the training on a constant basis. I mean, the state bar in your state might require that you have so many hours of continuing legal education, but that's not the same thing as being in a public law office that probably has more training. Also, there is the situation where there's constant review of the attorneys in terms of what they're doing. There is a review of their cases after they're over in terms of what the outcomes were and whether or not they were expected. The other concern not expressed in the study or in the New York Times article is the role the judges play in this. And I think that this is also important because judges have the opportunity, if they perceive that there is a problem, to intervene. If a judge feels that a defendant is not receiving competent counsel, then there are things that the judge should do. It is extremely rare for a judge to intervene, however, especially when one considers that in probably 50% of the 50 states, judges are elected, and especially when they're elected, there's going to be even less intervention because of the concern that people that are potentially running against judges might say, well, gee, this judge is more concerned about the rights of criminal defendants than they are about the rights of victims. So that probably isn't going to happen very often, but I think it's important that listeners understand that judges could and should be intervening if they feel that there's an injustice. The concern is that a criminal defendant is entitled to a competent lawyer, but the people are not necessarily entitled to a competent DA. I mean, if you have an incompetent DA, there's absolutely nothing that a judge can do or that a judge ethically should do. So there is that distinction as well.
Well, we have seen, too, in the news lately what a competent legal team or an allegedly competent legal team can do for some high-profile murder cases where people have been found innocent. In these cases, too, we're looking at this as Philadelphia, but we're assuming that the results, if we did this nationwide, would be similar. And when we talk about a competent defense, it's not only, how much training the lawyer has, but even if he is motivated to do the best possible job he can, it's hard for him to hire experts. It's hard for him to do all the things that a well-paid legal team would do in these situations, right?
You're correct, but what the article and the study don't point out is the differences in state law. In California, there is a motion that defense attorneys can bring in the right kind of case where the court has to provide money for certain kinds of experts. Now, there has to be a showing of necessity, but if you're privately retained, it's something different, a different standard. But if you're court appointed and it's an indigent, at least in California, that's not a difference.
Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things in closing here on this study is that it did show that if Pennsylvania, for example, helped to improve the quality of counsel, it would then achieve fairer outcomes and probably reduce prison costs by something around $200 million, which seems like a decent incentive to somehow find a way to fix this.
I agree. Having said that, however, let's remember that without that financial incentive, there would be no political incentive.
Right.
The average citizen, in my view, doesn't really care that there are injustices with respect to criminal defendants. I mean, after all, we continue to have information that we know for a fact that within the United States, people have been executed who were, in fact, actually innocent, but yet we still have a death penalty. And you know, I mean, obviously there are people in the states that have capital punishment where mistakes have happened, but that's still not enough to have the reform because it's an emotional decision. The other thing is, even though it can be proven statistically that there would be savings, if not 200 million, at least several million. The average legislator is going to be very conservative in terms of trying to trumpet that because, again, they don't want to be perceived by an opponent as being weak on crime. And so even though given our economy and all of in our nation and in our individual states, this is what is motivating prison reform, sentencing reform, all those kinds of things, because the amount of money is huge. But in a better economy, it wouldn't get any traction whatsoever.
Appreciate your time, Judge. Good stuff. Thank you. This is the Family Law Channel. My guest is retired Superior Court Judge, Santa Clara, California, Eugene M. Hyman. I'm Scott Drake. Thanks for watching.